Good day traders, welcome to this week's Market Fix. My name is John Jacobs for RMDTRADER and I look forward to presenting to you this week's price predictions and chart analysis of all your favorite market instruments. We start with a quick look at our disclaimer before we will be jumping right in. I'm especially excited about the high probability setup provided by an inverted head and shoulders on GBPNZD and also an excellent long opportunity on silver with a great risk-reward ratio. So stay tuned. Starting by looking at our major cryptocurrencies, and we are now looking at Bitcoin on the daily time frame. Bitcoin is still trading within the larger range of 30,000 to 41,000. Currently, we see Bitcoin trading within a tighter range between about 32,500 and 36,000. Also looking at a bigger picture, we can see that we have our yearly 365 daily moving average still being respected. That will be the final line in the sand, and that also defines our lower boundary of that 30 to 31,000 range. And as we've previously also pointed out, that 61.8% Fibonacci retracement from the previous swing low that we saw in July in 2020 last year. So the important thing to keep an eye out for would be a break of the tighter range that we see now between 33 and 36,000, and a break above 36,000, which is the current level of resistance. We'll likely see a move back to the top of that range that is sitting at 40,900 or 41,000. Just below our current monthly R1 pivot. And of course, a test of that level could see Bitcoin move back into the range and maybe retest that yearly R1 pivot at 37,500. So for now, Bitcoin remains range bound, no immediate danger unless we see a break below 30,500, which if that were to happen, the move down to about 20,600 where our yearly pivot is very likely. Just taking a quick look at Ethereum, we can see that Ethereum also still a little bit out of danger with that head and shoulders pattern neckline, still being respected above our daily 200 SMA. That's sitting at about 2,000. So that 2,000 level, very important for Ethereum. And should that level break, as with Bitcoin, I suspect we will see a move lower. We have support levels at about 1,600. That is the previous important level support, and just below that we do have our yearly 365 daily moving average, which will probably meet up with at about 1,400. In terms of a bullish break, if we can take out that 50 or 40 SMA, that would be in the vicinity of about 2,300, and if we can get back above that resistance level, and that which defined the last swing high at about 2,400. If we break above that, it's likely that we will firstly test the daily 100 SMA, which coincides with the top of our left shoulder, and that's sitting at 2,500. So also that psychological level, and a break above that will take us back to the top of that right shoulder, where our monthly R1 is currently at 2,800. Now I'd like to have a look at gold. Gold is also still respecting that test of that 61.8 Fibonacci retracement that we mentioned previously. We have also now taken out those previous shadows and highs that we saw coinciding with our daily 100 SMA, meaning price is now trading above the daily 100 SMA, which is very bullish at this stage. It is contending with the monthly pivot at this stage at 1,800. So any pullback, we'll see some support from the level at about 1,790 to, let's just make that 1,800. We have our weekly pivot also at 1,800, so that will offer some support for the week to come. If we do take out our monthly pivot, I suspect we will likely see a move higher, and a very possible level would be closer to that 1,850 level that I've marked at our weekly R2. In terms of a sell-off and support, we have identified a long-term diagonal, and that is sitting at 1,750 for this week. So in the event of a very big sell-off in gold, we should be finding some support from this level. And also I'd like to have a look at silver. Silver has created this large symmetrical triangle where it has now tested its a lower boundary. That was at 25.802. And what's also happening here is that it's also the daily 200 SMA. So any consolidation like this on a daily 200 SMA is usually bullish, meaning I am expecting a move higher to the top of that symmetrical triangle, where we do have our yearly our monthly R1 pivot coinciding with that previous swing high range that we see over here. And that is giving us a target of between 27.72 and 27.991. If that level is reached, it's likely that we will see a slight pullback before we will hopefully then see a breakout, putting silver into a new bullish trending phase. Moving on now to UK Brent crude oil. I'll just have to briefly give you some background on what we've seen happening here. So back in the beginning of the year, we did see a breakout of that large bearish channel that Brent crude was trading in. And then from there, we've seen that price slowly make its way in this bullish trend upwards, mostly respecting the 40 SMA. This is the green dotted line. Just recently, on Thursday, tested that level once again last week. And that means if we were to see this trend continue, we will likely see this move continue higher, with the top of the range currently at the monthly R1 is at 77.78, the possible target for this week. Moving on now to our indices, having a brief look at the DAX. DAX also very much range bound, refusing to break down, and you can see that price is finding some support at this 15,360 level, and also resistance from our yearly R1, very strong resistance from our yearly R1 at 15,700. So there is some caution carried out at this level, but if we do break this level, it's likely that we will see price move higher into new all-time highs. We have some resistance from our monthly R1 at 15,800 and some further resistance at our monthly R2 level at 16,070. For the Dow, we see a similar range-bound pattern, also price trying to test that previous all-time highs that is sitting at about 35,060. So if price manages to continue this pattern of moving higher, we will likely see that all-time high being tested, and we will have some resistance, and actually very strong resistance from our monthly R1 to that weekly R2, somewhere between 35,290 and 35,420. In terms of support, I suspect we will have some support from our 40 SMA on the daily time frame, coinciding with that weekly S1 pivot at 34,380. A break below that will likely see a move back towards the lower end of that range. That coincides with the daily 100 SMA and the weekly S2 at 33,840. Looking now at the NASDAQ, the NASDAQ has been relentlessly trending upwards in this very steep slope, bullish slope and channel. And I suspect that we will likely now be testing that yearly R1 resistance at 14,980 to about 15,000, which would be the psychological level, of course. That would be very strong resistance, and I would do like to put out a caution, as that could be a level that sees some sellers stepping in and buyers taking some profit, and a breakdown from that level, and especially a break below our weekly S1 and that diagonal support at 14,600 could see a move as low as that monthly pivot level at 14,200. So be careful for that one. Moving on to Forex, and I'm just going to look at the USDJPY quickly. The USDJPY has also broken out of a symmetrical triangle pattern recently. It has now come back to retest that breakout level, finding some support from that previous level of resistance, and our monthly S1 pivot at 109.82. I suspect we will see a bounce from this level, as this is quite a strong level of support. Move back towards the monthly pivot at 110.5 would be the first level to keep an eye out for, and from there I suspect we will move higher towards our weekly R1 at 111.07, and from there it's possible that we will see the price continuing to move higher, perhaps firstly testing that monthly R1 at 111.75. Moving on to the GBPNZD. The GBPNZD has formed a very large inverted head and shoulders, which we have been covering for a while now. Still struggling to really break out from that neckline, but we are trading above the yearly pivot and the neckline level at 1.978. So that is all still bullish. And as long as we can stay above that level, I suspect we will slowly be making our way higher towards, much higher levels, as you can see on my chart. And this blue zone, which is the resistance zone at the monthly R2 pivot, but that only starts at 2.02-ish. There is some initial resistance, and I'll rather just move that green level to over there. And you can see that we do have some resistance from that level, which is a diagonal resistance level, as well as the weekly R1 and monthly R1 at 2.00, as well as that psychological level. So that is a possible target for this week. And in terms of support, there will be support at our monthly pivot at 1.973. Looking at a GBPNZD, we see a similar strength of the Great Britain pound against the USD in this setup, where we have tested the lower end of support, and currently on Friday we saw a very bullish candle moving back towards that daily 100 SMA, the monthly pivot and weekly R1, all sitting at an area of 1.395. So that would be the immediate target for this week. If that target can be broken and we see a move higher, I suspect another move towards the monthly R1 at 1.412 can be expected. And in terms of support, I do have some support from our daily 200 SMA at the lower end of that range at 1.368. Finally, I'd like to conclude by looking at the USDZAR, and we still are in the process of forming this inverted head and shoulders pattern. At least that's what it seems like. It would be important to get that daily close once again above the daily 100 SMA, that's the blue dotted line. And if we can do that, I suspect we will see a move higher initially to that monthly R2, that's at 15 Rand to the dollar. And after that, perhaps a slight pullback to that 200 daily SMA, and from there a move higher. And I suspect that would be the full inverted head and shoulders target for now at about 1550. And just considering support, there is some support at the monthly pivot, which is the lower end of that right shoulder, just before invalidating that shoulder, and also that 10-year diagonal, all sitting at the psychological level of 14 Rand to the dollar. Well, that's a wrap. We hope you enjoyed this week's video. Please remember to support our channel by subscribing. Until next time, trade smart and trade successful.